Anthony Hernandez versus Michel Pereira. Hernandez won by 5th round TKO. I actually missed the first round, but from everything I saw, Hernandez ragdolled Pereira for 4.5 rounds. And he got the 5th round TKO by ground and pound, by elbowing Pereira's face and opening wounds around his eyebrow, kind of like Renato Moicano with Benoit Saint-Denis, but this was in the 5th round rather than the first. And from what I saw, Pereira had a good kick down the midsection in the first round, but other than that, it was Anthony Hernandez domination. But what I wanted to talk about was something Hernandez said in his post-fight interview. He said, like, I think it was Paul Felder, whoever was interviewing him, asked him, who do you want to fight next? And he goes, oh, I don't follow the roster that closely, so I couldn't even tell you who's ahead of me. Which brings me to the topic of, I've noticed there's two types of UFC fighters. The first type is the students of the game type of UFC fighter, which is fighters who study all of the other fighters in their weight class and even in other organizations and stuff, versus the too cool for school UFC fighters who don't even pay attention to their roster. For example, in the first class, the students of the game UFC fighters, I would put Ilia Topuria and Dricus du Plessis, for example, because Topuria said he not only knows everyone in his weight class, and even if they're outside the rankings, he also knows people in his weight class that are in other organizations. And Dricus du Plessis said something similar. He said, because Paulo Costa said when he was about to fight Sean Strickland that he didn't look at any of Sean Strickland's fights. And Dricus spoke about that, and he said that's mind-bogglingly stupid, because if he had paid attention to Dricus's fight with Sean Strickland, he would have learnt how to deal with Sean Strickland and how to put pressure on him and stuff. And it showed that Paulo Costa didn't study him because he looked terrible in that fight. So Dricus always studies his opponents and always pays careful attention to detail. So Dricus and Ilia are in one class, and in the second class you have people like Anthony Hernandez and Bo Nickel, who always talk about how they missed the UFC event every week. No, Bo Nickel always talks about how he never watches UFC events, even if they're in his weight class. And Anthony Hernandez, like with Bo Nickel, you don't know if he's really that way, or he just wants to come across as too cool for school. I think he really is that way. But with Anthony Hernandez, he definitely is that way. That's who he is as a person, because he's got chickens. He owns a farm. I don't know if he owns a farm, but he just grew up without any TV and just playing with wild animals. And now that he's a UFC fighter, he continues to live in a similar fashion, an outdoorsy type of person who doesn't really pay attention to the UFC. And then you've got, so one class is Ilia Topuria and Dricus du Plessis. The other class is Anthony Hernandez and Bo Nickel. And I guess Sean Strickland would be someone in the middle, because he used to study fighters, I think, because he paid attention to Alex Pereira, and he always saw the left hook. But because he was so overly obsessed with that, he got caught by a different punch, or maybe it was the other way around. So ever since then, he stopped watching UFC fighters. So so that he doesn't get obsessed with a particular characteristic and rather have like a full game. But until now, the student of the game fighters seem to be the best. Dricus and Ilya are champions, and Anthony Hernandez and Bo Nickel are not yet, but they're on the come up. So it's going to see if the two call for school type that doesn't pay attention, if they become as successful as the first type. Like and subscribe.